We all know that Donald's cabinet is essentially an unending clown car of dim witted, incompetent yes men and grifters. And today, a few of them finally got the public lashing they all have long deserved. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem humiliated herself yet again in a Senate Homeland Security hearing when she couldn't answer a basic question posed to her by Senator Maggie Hassan.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the live free or die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
Okay, now, this is either staggering idiocy or this is staggeringly un-American. Kristi Noem, well-known puppy murderer, started to try to tell us that habeas corpus is exactly the opposite of what it is in the Constitution. She was trying to lie to the American people to say that habeas corpus is something that the president is the right of the president to suspend other people's rights, just for no reason even. Clearly, she was either just carrying water for the Trump regime or, like her boss, hasn't read the Constitution. This should alarm absolutely anybody who continues to care about having the right to due process in this country. Then Senator Gary Peters hit her with the real question. How much money is the Trump regime burning through on their cruel, chaotic immigration policies?
And on the day that I visited, there were 87 people in custody. And my understanding is that's a pretty normal number. There's at that time, at least. So my back of the napkin calculation, we're waiting for your numbers, is that it's costing about $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo Bay. Man, this is like ripe for Doge. Why is Doge not down there? We're spending $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo, and we fly them down there, we keep them there a while, then we fly them back to the United States. Or we could keep them here for $165 a day. I think that's kind of outrageous. So, I'm concerned by the staggering cost of this, and I would hope, Secretary, you could commit providing this committee a detailed breakdown of the total cost of that operation there. There were just a sea of empty beds. There was all sorts of security folks and nobody in those beds, which is why it's so expensive. So,
of course, no one doesn't know anything about this. She couldn't be bothered. But I know that numbers and arithmetic are not strong suits of Donald or anybody in the Trump regime. So I just want to help out a little bit. $100,000 a day is, how do I put this? A mega fuck ton more than $165 a day. But again, what does Noem care? It's not her money. She walks around with a Gucci bag in which she carries $3,000 in cash. So this is all irrelevant. Why could she possibly be bothered knowing what the budget for her own department is? As all of this egregious waste is going on, Noem is also requesting another $50 million jet for her department as well. Notice I said another one. She already has one of those. So it's important for senators like Gary Peters to be very clear in such hearings so that the American people know what numbers we're talking about. We are living in a situation in which an unconstitutional illegal agency was created out of whole cloth without consent of Congress that has told us their whole point is government efficiency. And yet, the Trump regime is setting our money on fire. But it wasn't just Noem who was grilled today. But before we go on, just please remember we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. We don't bend the knee, and we are not for sale. We expose every day the lies the Trump regime wants buried. Independent media survives because of you. So please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Secretary of State, part-time, Marco Rubio showed up to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and he got absolutely torched. Things got heated when Senator Chris Van Hollen called the Trump regime pathetic for preying on innocent college students.
People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ostork did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single one of these cases, the factors are different.
Senator,
the bottom line is if you're coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you have a visa,
First Amendment apply to
we will
people
revoke
living in the United States?
And we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a bunch of lunatics
to the
who are
tough
here on student
newspapers
visas.
disrupting the
Simple
foreign
as
policy of the United States.
I want to do more. I hope we can find more of these people.
Pathetic, Mr.
In fact,
Secretary.
the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much safer
right,
when you lock up people like Ms. Ostork, Mr. Secretary.
We've had enough.
Just to be clear, what part-time Secretary of State Marco Rubio and full-time guy in charge of the Diet Coke button is talking about is a 30-year-old graduate student at Tufts University specializing in childhood development. Okay, she wrote an op-ed to the school newspaper. That's why they revoked her visa and then incarcerated her illegally in a facility in Louisiana for over 6 weeks. This is what happens when you put weak, pathetic people like Marco Rubio in positions of power. They know that the only way for them to feel good about themselves is to make the most vulnerable among us afraid. That's why Donald picks people like Marco Rubio. But no, this country is not safer with people like Ms. Ostork incarcerated illegally. We are safer when we have people, students, qualified students coming into this country from other nations in order to make us more diverse, in order to add to what we know collectively as a country and as a people. What makes us more dangerous is putting people like that in charge, these incompetent and cruel idiots. Rubio was further called out for spreading disinformation about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man that the Trump regime has wrongfully deported and incarcerated in a gulag in El Salvador, giving him absolutely no due process. Rubio pretended to know nothing about Donald's dinner this Thursday, where he offered access to top bidders on meme coin, half of whom are foreign nationals. Several senators called Rubio disgrace to his face. Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland, told him he regretted voting for him. And by the way, on that issue, every single Democratic senator in the Senate the day that Marco Rubio was confirmed voted for that miscreant. As all of these failures piled up at Rubio's feet, Senator Jackie Rawson delivered what was pretty much amounting to a death blow. You've got to watch this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to get right into it. Secretary Rubio, I'm going to embrace my Jewish mother instincts for a moment. So as a mother, a senator, and a fellow human being, I can tell you that I'm not even mad anymore about your complicity in this administration's destruction of U.S. global leadership. I'm simply disappointed. And I wonder if you're proud of yourself in this moment when you go home to your family, because I've always found you, Senator Rubio, to be a bipartisan, pragmatic partner, a true believer that the U.S. is stronger when we lead with diplomacy and development. You have a strong record on this, but I don't recognize Secretary Rubio. A stalwart support of Israel, you've watched this administration abandon Saudi normalization with Israel in order to pursue business deals. You were once a fierce critic of Vladimir Putin, but you sat idly by as the president berated the elected leader of Ukraine for not capitulating to Russia.
That pathetic excuse for a man didn't even have the courage to face Senator Russin as she essentially told him that he wasn't worth even being angry at anymore. He just sat there, eyes down, pretending to write himself some notes. Clearly, Rubio sold what little soul he had left by agreeing to become part of the Trump regime. But I have to tell you, I don't think he cares anymore. I think that it was a bargain that he was more than happy to make, and he, like his boss, isn't capable of shame anymore, to the extent that he ever was. Then came an extremely satisfying moment. Elizabeth Warren tore into IRS Commissioner nominee Billy Long, the same Billy Long who's been dodging ethics complaints for years. No wonder Donald wants him on board. Today, during his confirmation hearing, Warren went for his jugular. Now, 3 weeks ago, Warren gave Long one question. Can the president order the IRS to revoke nonprofit status from political enemies? The answer is obviously no. It's illegal. But Long, he still wouldn't say.
I sent you the statute. You've had 3 weeks to talk to the lawyers about it. So let's jump in. Mr. Long, is it illegal for the president to direct the IRS to revoke a taxpayer's nonprofit status?
In the first place, he wouldn't do that. He's not going to come to me and say that.
That's not my question, Mr. Long. Please don't start down this.
Are we on section 7212 or 7217?
I'm at 26 U.S.C. 7217. Do I need to read it to you?
Prohibits any member of the executive branch to request the IRS to conduct or terminate an audit on a taxpayer.
All righty. So is it illegal?
I'm going to follow the law. And if that's the law, yes.
Okay, but I want you, that is the law. Is it illegal for the president to instruct the IRS to remove nonprofit status from a taxpayer?
I'm not going to have the answer that you need, and I apologize, but like I said.
Why are you not having the answer? You've had 3 weeks to consult with lawyers. The statute is about as clear as plain English.
Well, if I say I'm going to follow the law, why would you need to ask me the question?
Well, because I want to make sure that you understand what the law says. If you think follow the law means you just get to make it up on the spot, then, Bud, you don't get to be the IRS commissioner.
I said I would.
The point here is to follow the law as it is written, and I'm asking what I think is a pretty simple question.
I'm not able to answer.
You can't read these words and tell what those words say?
I can read the statute, and I did.
All right, then tell me what they mean.
Well, he can't tell you what they mean because he's complicit. Not even Billy Long is stupid enough not to be able to interpret what is clear as day. The reason he was chosen is because he's a fraud who's long been involved in tax schemes. So I'm very glad that Senator Warren would not let this issue go. But to be perfectly honest, he will get to be chairman of the IRS because the Democrats don't have the votes to stop him. Then Ron Wyden stepped up and proved that Long had committed a criminal act on Inauguration Day. Now, to his credit, Long came up with what I think is a pretty novel excuse. He committed the crime because he had food poisoning.
And you've been getting all these questions from my colleagues with respect to this $165,000 in campaign donations after the announcement that you had been nominated. Is the concern about the possibility that promises were made in exchange for that money? I just want to give you the chance to go over this with me. did you promise any tax promoter you would help them if you got confirmed?
I can answer that with an affirmative no.
Okay. So you didn't meet with anybody when you were in town for the inauguration and promised them a private letter arrangement or something like that?
A private letter arrangement,
where you say, we're going to help. We're going to help you if I'm confirmed.
I haven't promised anybody a letter of any type that I can think of.
Okay.
And I was in my room for about 50 hours because I had food poisoning during the inauguration, so I didn't talk to many people.
Okay. Mr. Long, our staff investigators have on tape now a tax promoter saying you met with him at the inauguration and promised him a favorable private letter ruling. We also have on tape the White River CFO who gave you the thousands of dollars that he expects favorable treatment of these fake tribal credits. So that's why I'm so troubled by this argument you've given today that, well, you can go over to the FEC and see things. That money doesn't just fall out of the sky and land at the FEC, and that's why these taped conversations are so troubling to me.
Now, first of all, I think that Long doesn't give himself enough credit. I think that most people in the Trump regime are such skilled criminals that they can multitask. They can have food poisoning and commit crimes at the same time. But guess what? It's irrelevant because he's on tape committing the crimes. And can they get him for perjury now too? Contempt of Congress? Because he just lied to a sitting senator's face. Finally, we have Robert Kennedy continuing to disgrace himself in yet another sparring match with Patty Murray. He lost his cool, tried to blame Joe Biden for his own failures. I swear I do not know what Joe Biden has to do with Kennedy's tenure at Health and Human Services. And then he got completely shut down.
Whose decision was it to withhold child care and development block grant funding?
Senator, I want to point out that in 2021, at the beginning of his administration, President Biden submitted his budget on May. You know what? You made an accusation of me, and I'm going to answer it.
Okay, I appreciate
On May
that.
28th, he submitted his budget. So our budget. We're a new administration.
Okay, you can.
And I also want to point out.
I have just 2 minutes left. I asked you a specific.
I want to point out something, Senator. You presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people.
Well,
our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously,
because you have not done your job.
Seriously. That is an
what have you done about it? What have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Mr. Secretary,
what have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Seriously, Madam
Secretary,
Chairman.
I would ask you to hold back and let the senator ask the questions.
Mr. Secretary, I'm asking you a question about child care. I'm asking you who made the decision to withhold child care and development block grant funding.
That was made by my department.
Wow. That took like 4 seconds. See what happens when you tell the truth? It's so simple. Otherwise, you just get tangled up in this web of lies you cannot see right through. And then you start blaming other people. And then you lose your temper because people like Robert Kennedy, much like Donald, much like Elon Musk, they are a bunch of spoiled, entitled brats who can take responsibility for nothing. And to make all of it worse, each and every single one of them is more incompetent than the next. So yes, this was a terrible day for members of the Trump regime. It was a great day for many voters who were feeling helpless and frustrated, who were feeling that they are not getting the right information that they need. But quite honestly, how does this help us? Because these people are still in charge. I'm not saying that this is an important, and this is the kind of grilling that Democrats have been begging for from their representatives in Congress. We need them to keep this up. We need them to keep their foots on the accelerator and not let up at all. Because if we can keep the pressure on people in the Trump regime who every single day are chipping away at our rights, who are chipping away at our institutions, the institutions, imperfect though they may be, keep us safe, keep us healthy, keep us American, then maybe we have a shot at saving our country from fascism. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.